Ever celebrated Christmas 6 times in one day? No? Well, you're about to. Today, we're travelling 500 years back in time to celebrate not 1, but 6 Tudor Christmases, one with each wife of Henry VIII. Which queen spent her Christmas behind bars? Whose gift was snubbed by the king himself? Who had only one Christmas as queen? All that and much more in today's journey through Tudor festivities. History awaits. Time travel begins now. Welcome back to Female Tales. I'm Yulia, and together on this channel, we explore the stories of remarkable women from history. If history speaks to you, like the video, join our community, and let's head straight into the depths of the past. Our imaginary time machine has just landed on Christmas Eve 1509, and that's no coincidence. It's a momentous year for Catherine of Aragon. Just 6 months ago, she and Henry VIII were crowned King and Queen of England. And now, they're about to celebrate their very first Christmas on the throne. The young couple is madly in love. Catherine is pregnant for the first time, though sadly she will lose this child in January, along with 4 more in the years to come. But for now, that sorrow still lies ahead. Today, the royal couple is focused on planning a Christmas celebration worthy of a crown. You see, Henry VIII's father, Henry VII, had a reputation for being, well, let's just say, frugal. So, the newly crowned Henry, now with full control of the royal treasury, was determined to spend big, very big. His first Christmas budget was the equivalent of £13 million in today's money. You might be thinking, that's a bit much for one holiday. But back then, Christmas wasn't just one day. It was 12 full days of festivities, starting on Christmas Eve and ending on January 6th, known as Twelfth Night. So suddenly, that budget starts to make a bit more sense. Now, if you're looking around Richmond Palace wondering, wait, where's the Christmas tree? I'm afraid I have to disappoint you. In Tudor England, the Christmas tree hadn't caught on yet. That tradition wouldn't arrive from Germany until the 1800s, brought over by Queen Charlotte and later made fashionable by Queen Victoria. Back in 1509, the palace was decorated with what were known as kissing boughs, bundles of mistletoe and other evergreen plants like holly, bay and rosemary. Yes, the same rosemary you use in your holiday roast was once tied into large balls and hung from the ceiling on Christmas Eve. Still not impressed? Take a look at the fireplace. That enormous burning log isn't just keeping the chill away. It's also a centuries-old tradition, likely rooted in Viking times. It was believed that if the Yule log burned steadily through all 12 days of Christmas, the leftover ashes would bring good luck for the year ahead. And yes, the chocolate Yule logs we serve today are probably a distant and much tastier echo of that tradition. If, by now, you're starting to miss your usual Christmas traditions and a royal church service doesn't exactly sound like thrilling entertainment, don't worry, the Tudors had their own ways of keeping things festive. For example, Tudor Christmas carols often came with a twist. Livery enactments of the stories they told, sometimes paired with full-on costumed performances. In 1509, young Henry VIII himself dressed up as Robin Hood, while his friends played the merry band of outlaws. Costume play wasn't just a one-off. Henry absolutely loved it. One of his favourite games was to burst into Catherine's chambers in disguise, expecting her to be completely surprised every single time. And Catherine, ever the dutiful queen, always played along, gasping with delight, just as expected. Now, if you're getting impatient to unwrap your Tudor presents, I hate to disappoint you again, but back then, gifts weren't exchanged on Christmas Day. The proper time for that was New Year's Day, January 1st. Gifts to the king weren't just kind gestures, they were often strategic moves, a kind of social elevator. Every courtier tried to be more original than the next, because the presents were opened in front of the entire court. Among the more creative gifts Henry received were a set of dog collars, 6 types of Suffolk cheese, and a monkey. But what did Catherine give her new husband that year? She presented him with a beautifully illuminated missal, a religious book richly decorated by hand. In the years that followed, Catherine would often give Henry handmade gifts, including items she embroidered herself, and for a long time he treasured them. But after 23 years of marriage, when their love had faded and Catherine had become the wife he so desperately wanted to cast aside, even her gifts no longer pleased him. In fact, there was one gift he rejected publicly and with scandal. But to uncover that story, we'll need to travel forward once again. We now find ourselves on December 31st, 1532, at Greenwich Palace, where the halls are already ruled by the new mistress of Henry VIII's heart, Anne Boleyn. Just 1 month earlier, on November 14th, Anne and Henry had been secretly married, and now she may already have been pregnant, or perhaps would conceive during the holiday celebrations. After all, Elizabeth would be born exactly 9 months later, in September 1533. Anne adored Christmas and put great care into planning it. That year, she presented Henry with a very special gift: darts of Biscayan fashion, richly ornamented. He was delighted. They were perfect for boar hunting, which was the centerpiece of the Tudor Christmas feast. So no, if you were expecting turkey, I'm afraid you're a few centuries too early. Although Henry VIII was actually the first English monarch to try turkey for Christmas in 1523. Still, he always preferred game meat at his feasts. And if a boar's head on the table doesn't quite whet your appetite, let's talk about another Tudor specialty: a pie made from 13 ingredients, each one symbolizing the 12 apostles and Christ himself. Sounds meaningful, yes, but the taste? Likely challenging. Think sweat, meat scraps, and dried fruit all in one dish. Let's just say it might not make it onto a modern Christmas menu. But back to Anne. What did she receive in return? Henry gifted her a room hung with cloth of gold and silver and crimson satin with rich embroideries. Not bad at all, just the thing for furnishing her new royal apartments. But the holiday harmony was quickly shattered by Catherine of Aragon. She sent Henry a gift, a golden cup, along with respectful and humble words. This did not go over well, neither with Anne nor with Henry. He sent the cup straight back with a pointed message. She was never to send him such gifts again, for he was not her husband, as she ought to know. Anne likely rejoiced. It was yet another public sign of Henry's loyalty. She was on top of the world, and the coming year promised even more. A public coronation, royal status, and a future secured. But Anne had no idea that only 3 more Christmases remained in her lifetime, and that soon someone else would be decking these halls in her place. We've now arrived in the winter of 1536, a rare snowy season for England. The River Thames was frozen over and snow blanketed the fields, an unusual sight, even for Tudor times. People took full advantage of the weather, and snowball fights became the latest winter pastime. One can only wonder, did Henry VIII ever join in? Perhaps he tossed a snowball or two in the gardens of Greenwich with his third wife, Jane Seymour. Sadly, Jane would have only one Christmas as queen. From the moment she married the scandal-ridden Henry to the day she died after childbirth, only 18 months passed. But that single Christmas she did have, she made it count, so much so that Eustace Chapuis, the imperial ambassador, would later refer to her as a peacemaker. It was thanks to Jane's gentle influence that Henry began to reconcile with his daughters, Mary and Elizabeth, both of whom had been declared illegitimate after the annulments of their mothers' marriages. That year, they were invited to court to spend Christmas with their father. Little Elizabeth likely didn't understand the significance, but for Mary, it was a turning point. In order to regain her father's favour, she'd had to accept him as supreme head of the church and agree that her mother's marriage had never been valid, deeply painful concessions given her Catholic faith. Still, by winning a small battle, she may have won the greater war, gaining a new ally, and a kind stepmother in Jane. Sadly, that bond wouldn't last long. Jane died just 10 months later, in October 1537, shortly after giving birth to Henry's long-awaited son, Edward. And Mary, like Elizabeth, would go on to meet many more stepmothers. It's Christmas Day, 1539, and Henry VIII's fourth bride-to-be, Anne of Cleves, is in Calais, waiting for a favourable wind to carry her across the Channel to England. Anne had no idea what was waiting for her on the other side. She barely spoke English and knew very little about the country where she was about to become queen. So, to prepare her, William Fitzwilliam, the Earl of Southampton, began giving her a crash course in English court life. He even taught her Henry's favourite pastime, playing cards. One wonders, did he also introduce her to a very particular Tudor holiday tradition, wassailing? Wassailing was a ritual that involved a large carved or wooden bowl filled with steaming hot ale, cider, or beer, spiced with apples, sugar, rosemary, and warming spices. In other words, something very close to what we now call mulled wine. But there was one curious detail. At the bottom of the bowl, they placed a crust of bread, reserved for the most important person in the room. In many ways, it was the Tudor version of raising a glass. Anne's first meeting with Henry took place on New Year's Day, January 1st. And despite all the preparation, it was a disaster. Henry, a lifelong fan of romantic roleplay, decided to surprise her in one of his signature disguises. He burst into her chambers, wearing a cloak and showering her with kisses. Anne, understandably confused and having no idea who this man was, responded with complete indifference. Henry was crushed. His infamous verdict? "I like her not." And just like that, the marriage was doomed. They stayed wed for only 6 months, and Anne never got the chance to celebrate a single Christmas as queen. Still, keeping your head is arguably more important than keeping your crown, a sentiment that our next queen, Catherine Howard, might have agreed with. And with that, it's time to step forward once again. Henry and Catherine Howard spent their first and only Christmas together in 1540 at Hampton Court Palace. Also present at the celebrations was Anne of Cleves, yes, the fourth wife, who surprisingly became friends with the fifth. The two women, a former queen and a reigning one, danced together all night long. And if you happen to notice a rather unpleasant smell in the palace corridors, don't be alarmed, that would be Henry VIII himself. By this time, the king was extremely overweight and seriously ill, and during the long holiday feasts, he was suffering from an open, festering leg wound that refused to heal. Still, Henry was absolutely smitten with young Catherine, calling her the very jewel of womanhood, and he spared no expense in showing it. He spent outrageous amounts of money on his teenage wife. Let's take a look at her Christmas gifts. A little 16th century unboxing. Diamonds, pearls, a black velvet scarf lined with sable fur and decorated with precious stones, and even 2 little lapdogs, which she later gifted to Anne of Cleves. But her second Christmas as queen looked very different. By December 1541, Catherine was no longer in the grand halls of the palace. She was under house arrest at Sion Abbey, awaiting her fate. She had been arrested the month before in November, accused of high treason. At that time, cheating on the king was considered the same as betraying the state. Catherine had had romantic relationships before the marriage, and later a secret affair with Thomas Culpeper, even while she was queen. The men involved were executed before Christmas, and their heads displayed on London Bridge, a grim replacement for festive decorations. Catherine's own execution came a few weeks later, in February. So yes, Christmas 1541 was not exactly merry. One more jump in time, and here we are, in 1545, back at Hampton Court. But the festive sparkle we saw back in 1509? Long gone. Henry was now over 50, in very poor health, and no one at court was in the mood to celebrate. The king suffered from severe obesity and could no longer walk without assistance. He had to be moved around the palace using special mechanical devices. His leg wound was still open and badly infected, and his mood was highly unpredictable. That year, Christmas was spent in the quiet company of his daughter Mary and his sixth and final wife, Catherine Parr. Now, take a closer look at Catherine's face. Most people know her as the one who survived, but in truth, she was much more than that. Catherine Parr was a woman of intellect, influence, and resilience, and she would go on to shape not a king, but a future Queen Elizabeth I. She and the then 11-year-old Elizabeth had a deep bond, and Catherine played a key role in shaping both her education and character. That Christmas, Elizabeth prepared a very special gift for her stepmother, an embroidery she made with her own hands, along with a translated devotional text, The Mirror of the Sinful Soul. Just look at the delicacy and detail of the work. Catherine would spend one more Christmas as queen. Though it was barely celebrated at all by then, Henry was in terrible condition. And finally, in January 1547, she became free after the king's long and painful death. 6 very different wives. 6 very different Christmas days. I hope you enjoyed this little journey through time, but now it's time to return home and keep getting ready for one of the most magical days of the year. And even if you're not religious or don't celebrate Christmas at all, I still wish you truly all the light and warmth this season can bring, and a peaceful, hopeful start to the new year. In 2026, may you be as wise as Catherine of Aragon, as confident as Anne Boleyn, as gentle and peaceful as Jane Seymour, as diplomatic as Anne of Cleves, as romantic as Catherine Howard, and may you meet the year's challenges with the quiet strength of Catherine Parr. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year! See you in the next video.